Don't feel like a punter, feel like a favourite with our best odds guaranteed on all UK and Irish races.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to the latest edition of Road to Cheltenham. We are back on Zoom, and back on Zoom, I think, probably for the foreseeable future in the circumstances. But let's not dwell on that. Let's dwell on the racing instead. Ruby, how are you?
I'm good, Lydia. I managed to pick up the cold that you gave to me last week in Ealing that you went to Cheltenham with, and then I have it now. So I am fully blaming you for my voice.
Don't say that. Don't say that.
I could have got it on the airplane coming home. I could have got it in Cheltenham, but I was in the studio with you, and you did have a blocked or a head cold, and your voice was going. So hey, I sat beside you, so I'm blaming you.
Fair enough. Probably bang to rights. All tests were taken, ladies and gentlemen. It wasn't that. Right, let's have a look at what's been happening over the weekend. And unusually for this edition, we're going to start right at the top with Ruby's Analyse This. He's going to take a look at probably the star turn of the weekend. That was my Drogo. You remember him making his chase debut against Gin on Lime in that dramatic race that Gin on Lime was able to survive a mistake at the second last, and my Drogo wasn't. The Skeltons, Dan and Harry, took him back to Cheltenham on Saturday, and now Ruby is going to analyse what he achieved.
Yeah, I am going to analyse him because he did look to be the best horse on offer, or potentially the best horse on offer last weekend at Cheltenham. And we're going to analyse him because I think both Harry and Dan have a plan here, and they're both setting about it in a very productive way. Now, if you watch my Drogo, we'll pick him up going to the fourth fence. Look at Harry Skelton's hands, the much contact he has with my Drogo's mouth all the time. And again at the fifth fence. And that's trying to put as much power as he can to my Drogo's hind end. You see him at the sixth fence where he completely shortens him up, but going to the seventh, when he lets him run forward, he quickens and almost has himself on top of the fence. He really does attack his fences, my Drogo. Now at the 10th fence, where he stretches for it, again, watch Harry's hands. Even though he squeezes for a long stride, he never lets go of his head. Yet my Drogo only barely gets there and lands in the middle of the ditch. He lengthens to the 12th fence again, but as Harry says, go on, he's right on top of the fence. This horse really wants to get there. Takes him back, really takes him back at 4 out. He's good again at the second last, but to the last, when Harry lets him down, he doesn't get much elevation. He's quite low and flat. And the more you think about the way Harry rode him all the way through the race, the more you realise that this is a real work in progress. And Harry Skelton is helping this horse all the time, and he's going to need more experience. But the contact between Harry Skelton's hands, the horse's mouth, that's to keep the power in the horse's back end. And when you watch him at the last, you realise why Harry Skelton is doing it.
I found it really interesting what Dan Skelton had to say after my Drogo. He was also talking about the amount of experience that the horse needs, that he's going to be heading for the Dipper Novices Chase at Cheltenham back on New Year's Day, and potentially even another race in between that and the Cheltenham Festival. And he was saying, you can see that when Harry says go, it's not a delayed reaction. It's instant. The turbo kicks in, and that's probably where those couple of long jumps came in. Harry said go, and Drogo is like, well, let's see how far off we can get. How tameable is that?
It is tameable, Lydia, but I would much prefer a horse that way, that when you say go, wants to get there. They're much easier horses to ride and to teach than the one that's always backing off, that you have to ride in because they don't like jumping. My Drogo does like it. He's not afraid of the fences and he wants to get there. So that will be a plus, and experience will help him tame that a little bit, I suppose. But it was Dan's comments that made me even think about this or go and look at it, because they are going to campaign him boldly. And they didn't, after falling at Cheltenham, go back to a level, easy track. They went back to a difficult track. They want to teach him the hard way.
And how much scope do you think this horse has?
Just about enough. He's going to have to learn when he stands back. The last fence, I think he got there, but you would prefer if the trajectory of his front legs was more upwards. It was quite level, flat across the top. He'd prefer him to go slightly higher in front. But look, he'll learn.
Okay. Let's move on to some other novice chasers, shall we, in this novice chasing section. Blue Lord is the next one, and he made his chase debut, his seasonal debut, and it coincided with the return of Paul Townend as well, who'd been sidelined with quite a serious dislocated shoulder injury. It was great to see the two of them back together, and clearly, given he was coming back on a novice chaser, as Gary O'Brien observed, Blue Lord must have been schooling well.
Yes, and Paul Townend's theory was much easier to ride one in a beginner's chase where probably 3 could only win than going out in a handicap where maybe 15 could. So I think Paul's theory was a solid one. So Blue Lord, yeah, look, he jumped out. Obviously, he was a high-class novice hurdler last year. Wasn't good enough for appreciated, but he could be a better chaser. Went to the first fence. He was a little bit high, if anything, at the first fence, if you're being critical, but you wouldn't mind that. Went to the third fence, and he shortens himself up. Paul Townend doesn't have to take him back. He stands back at the 6th fence when he's asked to, and he gets to the 8th fence. He lets fly out of Paul's hands, but he gets there comfortably enough. Paul thought he was going to take another stride. He was good and clean at the second last, and he quickens up down to the last fence. He heads into the corner a little bit, but he was good and safe, and he's won quite impressively from El Barra and Cade Boy. It was a good starting point, Lydia. Did it come too close to Christmas for him to run at Leopardstown? Possibly, but that's just the scenario we're dealing with this year with the ground.
Yeah, absolutely. I thought there was it was a typical novice, but there was so much promise there for when he was really good.
Yeah, exactly. And get up in grade and more competitive. He looks to have the brain to shorten and the power to stand out,
which is good. Let's look back on what he achieved as a novice hurdler, and we've picked out the Supreme, in which he was absolutely booked for second. He was chasing Appreciated, the winner, through. That horse basically took over entering the straight, and For Pleasure back in third is also relevant because we're going to be talking about him in a moment.
Yeah, and look, he was booked for second. Obviously, Ballyadam let the form down in the international, but For Pleasure most certainly didn't let it down at Plumpton. When we talk about him, but yeah, Blue Lord then went back to Punchestown and was third behind Echoes and Rain and actually Colonel Mustard, I think, of Lorna Fowler's. But Blue Lord, he is a decent horse, and I think fences will make him a better horse.
Yes, it was a shame that he tipped up at Cheltenham. For Pleasure would have been booked for fourth. Otherwise, in the end, he finished third. Let's have a look at, well, we can discuss him anyway. He has run 3 times over fences this season. Last time at Plumpton on Monday, he beat Nassalam, the previous Newbury winner, by 37 lengths. The runner-up was probably below par and going out to his left.
Yeah, he was, but there was still a lot to like about For Pleasure. And I don't know, is it a tight track? Makes you think they're absolutely flying. But when you watch the replay, they look to be hurtling around Plumpton. But For Pleasure was very sure of what he was doing. And I'm sure Harry Bannister enjoys riding him. When he's long, he's good and brave. When he has to shorten, he's well able to do it. If you watch him in a replay of it, watch For Pleasure's ears. He's always looking at what he's doing. And he looks to have a lot of ability, and he'll take a fair bit of following. Nassalam is not a slow horse. Maybe he underperformed, but For Pleasure stretched him from flagfall. And when you watched him pulling up, Nassalam walks across the line. For Pleasure is heading out past the fence, past the stands. I did think it was, yeah. If I had For Pleasure, I'd be delighted with him.
Yeah, absolutely. He's a really likable horse. He's a bit of a terror. He likes to go, hard up front, and I think Plumpton would have been ideal for him. He set himself up for that £50,000 bonus that Plumpton Racecourse lay down for any horse that can go on to win at the Cheltenham Festival. His trainer Alex Hales is talking about the Arkle, but you would have thought that something like the Grand Annual might come into play as well.
I don't know. I think when you get into a Grand Annual, Lydia, you're going to get 4 or 5 handicappers that will go with you. Mm-hmm. When you line up in an Arkle, will you get enough. 1, maybe 2 that might want to take you on? And if you attack and go at your fences like For Pleasure does, there's 5 extra fences in the Arkle than there is in the hurdles in the Supreme. That could be an advantage to him.
Yeah, it really could be. That's a really good point. I suppose when I look back on that, when we're looking at that Supreme Novices run, I'm just struck by the scale of Appreciated as compared with For Pleasure. Appreciate's got a huge amount of scope. How is he, by the way? You seen him lately?
Yeah, he's in really good form. David Casey rides him. All he's working, he's very happy with him. But yeah, he's delighted with him. But I know what you're saying. The Appreciated looks the old-fashioned, iconic chaser, size, scope, power, and For Pleasure looks, I suppose, small beside him. But different things come in different sizes.
Yeah, absolutely. Because small things can be, good things come in small packages. That's
the one I was
eventually
looking
got
for.
there. Oh, good God, yeah, I know. We got there after about 4 stumbles. I should just highlight the form line with Edwardstone for pleasure on his second chase start, having fallen at Warwick on his debut, went back there, ran into Edwardstone, and we've since, of course, seen what Edwardstone has done. He probably tops the ranks of the British 2-mile chasers at the moment with that fantastic performance in the Henry VIII.
Yeah, he does, and that's looking pretty strong form. I mean, it's not been played out at Cheltenham. It's Warwick, Plumpton, obviously Edwardstone's done it at Sandown, but it's pretty strong form, and it just shows like that things do happen around the country. You can see amazing things at different tracks. I do believe I won a novice chase at Fakenham on Twist Magic one year.
You did. I was there. Yeah, I remember we were having one of our jaunts out to Fakenham, and it was it was a very welcome success. It was too. Right, let's think about Ireland and where things stand there. Have a quick look at the betting for the major. Well, I say the major. There's the 3-mile novice chase as well over Christmas, but for the 2-mile novice chase at Leopardstown, the Racing Post, and the 2-mile 3.5, the Faheen at Limerick. Fernie Hollow, who made such a sparky success at chase debut success at Punchestown. He's towards the 4 of the Racing Post novice chase. Would you expect him to be going there?
I kind of would. I think he started at the John Durkin weekend, which is a week earlier than Blue Lord, so he would look the obvious one for Willie. It'll be interesting to see what Henry does. You'd have to think Bob Ollinger will go to Limerick. It would look the obvious thing. For me, anyway, I think when he was being so good at 2.5 last season, and we won a 2.5 mile beginners, that's kind of where he'd be going.
Yeah, and he heads the betting for that at the moment. He had a couple of tantalising entries in Britain, and then unfortunately didn't turn up for either.
Hardly anything to do with his jockey, was it? I've just been thinking about that. I mean, Rachel will be in Kempton for riding Manila Indo. I know if I was her, I'd have been trying to get Bob Ollinger to Cheltenham last weekend or to Ascot this weekend. You'd be trying to get your leg across them anyway.
Yeah, I see what you're saying. Okay, so those are the major novice chases, along with the Neville's Hotel over Christmas in Ireland. We've got one coming up rather quicker tomorrow, the Howden Noel Novices Chase at Ascot, Ruby. 5 horses declared. Pick Dorhy, the horse that was set to rip apart that Grade 2 at Newbury until coming down 4 out. He's the favourite. Yeah,
he is. And look, what did he do? Take an extra stride that he probably shouldn't have taken at the 4th last. Probably should have stood back when they quickened to it. But look, he's a novice. You'd be hoping he's learned enough from it, Lydia. Ascot's a good test over fences as well, but he would look the best horse in the race. Yeah, he's up against the likes of Favois, who beat Torn and Frayed. That horse thumped by my Drogo last Saturday, and Favois beating him. It was a really good ride from Harry Skelton at Ascot on that day, actually. Right, let's head back to Ireland and pick up Statler. Second start back for Paul Townend. Same result as the first. Yeah, he had one of those kind of days on Saturday, our Paul Townend, so he did. But yeah, look, Statler, he was a decent novice last year, but look, he looks like he's going to be a better chaser, and looks like actually he's found a bit of gear over fences. Fighter Allen booked out to make the run, and Envoy Allen's brother. Statler jumped the first well. At the second, Statler in the red cap down the inside was probably safe, a little bit deliberate maybe, but the third fence, when Paul asks him, he responds and he jumps it. Now, he's very different to Blue Lord. Statler had to be asked to jump, whereas Blue Lord just went and did it himself. He was at the 9 fence, he quickened to it and put in a really good jump. Statler did. At the 10 fence was his first sort of resemblance of a mistake. He was a little bit slow at it. He was good at the 11th. And then down to the second last fence, and Fighter Allen is quickened up. Statler probably does land a little bit steep, but Paul's body language was always so confident. I don't know, is it the camera angle or what it is, but it looks like Fighter Allen is getting away, yet Paul Townend is never panicking on the near side. And by the time they get to the last fence, Statler's in charge, and he really quickens away nicely to win. So a good performance from him. I don't know, is he a 2.5 mile horse, 3 mile horse? I know I would have always thought he was a stayer watching him working in Willie's, but when you watched him the other day, he did look a faster horse over fences than he had ever looked over hurdles. Yes, Paul said afterwards that he was just surprised by Statler's response to him when he asked him to go and pick up Fighter Allen. He was previously 4th behind Vanillier in the Albert Bartlett at the Cheltenham Festival last season. He was second at the Dublin Racing Festival, the Gaillard de Mesnil as well. That was over 2 miles and 6. And I wonder, he probably had a pretty hard race that day. I wonder did that leave a mark on him?
Yeah, okay. So he has options potentially at more than just 3 miles and further. Let's talk about another staying chaser, or potentially another staying chaser. 3 under through 5. We've talked about his victory at Cheltenham earlier on in the season. He went to Doncaster at the weekend, faced a couple of rivals, and after some chancy jumps early on, ended up being quite a comfortable winner.
Yeah, I was more impressed with him probably at Doncaster than I had been previously at Cheltenham, where we thought maybe Oscar Elite was going to beat him, but we saw him fading last week at Huntington. So I thought 3 under through 5 was more impressive at Doncaster than he had been at Cheltenham. He looks like a horse that's learning, Lydia, and learning to race as well as just jump. And I don't know what the ultimate aim is for 3 under through 5, but he's going in the right direction.
Yes, originally they were talking about the Welsh National. Paul Nicholls was mentioning the Welsh National. You'd think by turning up at Doncaster that wouldn't necessarily be the case. And now connections are talking about the Reynoldstown or the new Winter Million at Lingfield, weather permitting.
Yes, but I suppose when the other horse went and won at Sandown and gets into the Welsh National without the penalty, that Paul divide and conquer.
Juggling. Yeah, absolutely. Let's talk about Corach Rambler. Who is a quirky looking horse. Well behind him is Under Supervision, and that threads into the form line with 3 under 3.5. Oscar Elite, Does He Know? He's quite comfortably beaten by Corach Rambler, who wins here a limited handicap of a mark of 134.
Yeah, and a first winner at Cheltenham for Derek Fox. Lucinda Russell's horses are obviously in great form. He was awkward at the first. I don't really know what he did, and he kind of races behind the bridle a bit at the third fence. You watch him down the hill. Derek has to give him a few slaps on the shoulders, and when he jumps get to the 11th fence, he's to ride him away on landing again. Now when he gets back up to the 4th last fence, if you watch him, he jumps out to his right, and Derek has his head completely turned into the left. But that's a sign of what's to come for Corach Rambler. Down the hill to the 2nd last, he jumps it well. But if we flick to the head on of him jumping the last fence, you watch Derek Fox, watch his left hand. He has loads of contact with the left rein. He's absolutely hauling Corach Rambler to the left. He's slapping him down the shoulder to the right. You see how little his left arm never moves. He has absolute rigid tension with that rein. He cannot do any more. But Alan John on his outside on Eva's Oscar never rode for the foul. He should have pulled his whip into his right hand and ridden into Corach Rambler to see if he might get it in the short drum. It was just too honest from Alan Johns.
I got the impression the winner, the horse, was well on top, that he's, quite a cheeky kind of horse. And, he's the kind of horse that can ascend through the handicap by not winning too far.
Yeah, I'd agree with you. But I mean, just if you do look back at that head on and watch Derek Fox's left hand, that's what maintaining contact and trying to keep a horse straight looks like.
I should mention he got quotes for the Cheltenham Festival afterwards, the Festival Novices Chase and the National Hunt Chase, which would probably be the far more likely of the two. But the aim is potentially the Scottish Grand National, and because of the way the calendar falls this season, that's actually precedes Aintree this season in 2022. So that probably counts out Cheltenham. Well, certainly counts out Cheltenham.
Watching him there, he did look like he'd be slightly better going the other way around. And a big field handicap, he'd want to sharpen up a little bit, I would think, on what we saw last weekend for a race as competitive as the Scottish National.
Well, we stick with the team Russell, Lucinda Russell. There was a rumour going around that Ahoy Seigneur, yours and my favourite, might get a Gold Cup entry this season. So I asked Peter Scudamore about it, and he confirmed that the horse may get an entry. He's got a concern that the horse might not be battle-hardened enough for such a target this season, but he's going to be weighing up, he and Lucinda, the strength of the opposition from the likes of Willie Mullins, the likes of Henry de Bromhead in novice company, to compare that with what the Gold Cup might look like. They've obviously got an ambition to win the Gold Cup at one day. And he said, interestingly, that options for the horse's next race are the Quarto Star, but he also mentioned Warwick and the Winter Million at Lingfield. So that suggests that the Quarto Star isn't, we won't be certain of seeing Ahoy Seigneur in that race until we actually see him.
No, and I can understand that too, Lydia. When you win a race, you think, oh, that's where we'll go next. And then you take them home and the euphoria of the victory is gone and you start thinking about it. So I notice some trainers will never give you the next target. And then it's not a target that's missed. Whereas when you commit to one, it can often be hard to get out of it. And Peter and Lucinda are changing there now. So, yeah. Look, I wouldn't be surprised. Warwick A lot of jumping in Warwick. He'd learn a lot there.
He would, absolutely. Right, so that is the update on the novice chasers. Now, what's been catching your attention? We've had lots of tweets and texts about Blazing Khal. So first of all, we'll analyse what happened in the race. He went back to Cheltenham. Charles Burns changed his mind, Ruby. He was originally going to keep him in campaigning in Ireland up until the Albert Bartlett in March, but he decided he wasn't too happy with Blazing Khal's jumping at the old course in November, so he wanted to take him back to the new course, the course and distance of the Albert Bartlett, and face that. He was carrying a grade 2 penalty, but the result was the same.
It was, and Gelino Bello tried different tactics. Harry Cobden elected to follow Donny McInerney and Blazing Khal this time. But look, we'll pick him up at the second hurdle. Yeah, he's safe, but there's nothing wrong with it. At the 7th hurdle, that's a really good jump. At the 8th hurdle, he gets in, but he doesn't lose that much ground to the opposition. And if you watch him at the 10th hurdle, he definitely gets the better of Gelino Bello in the air, who's just behind him. But when you get down to the 11th hurdle, yeah, that's where he makes a mistake and he ramps it. Things are getting tight in front of him. But you have to love how quickly he comes back on the bridle. I mean, you're expecting Donny McInerney to have to ride him along for 100 yards, but he doesn't. 3 strides later, he's quickly back on the bridle. He gets to the front going to the last hurdle and he has a look at that and he's safe. His jumping doesn't bother me. I know there was that mistake at the second last, but for a 3-mile hurdler, I think he jumps more than adequately. And I was impressed with him.
Yeah, he's even maybe partially got an excuse for that second last mistake with the horse jumping right across him. Gavin Greenwood was impressed. He said, having only 2 hurdles to jump in the final 7 furlongs will also help him. It'll take a good sort to beat Blazing Khal. David Brown says the horse has talent, but he's favourite for the Bartlett based on beating the same horse twice. For me, the form is okay at best, and there'll be plenty of others who may end up being better than him, but we'll see. The horse can only beat what's in front of him. Charles Burns referred to that. He said that he's not going to get too carried away because there are plenty of very good horses in Ireland. I didn't think he needed to remind us over here.
No, but Charles, I don't think is ever one to play it up, is he?
No, probably not. Probably not. Now, what's all this, Ruby? Mark Beaver's been in touch and says, I spoke to Ruby on Saturday and he gave our table 2 certs. Blazing Khal was one and the other Hi-Ho Phoenix. What's all this?
He's a fair definition of certs. What do you fancy? I think Blazing Khal and Hi-Ho Phoenix will win. Just because it came out of my mouth doesn't mean they're certainties, but thankfully they both did win.
We're just thinking, they'd like to share any views with us.
You never asked.
Go on then. I'm asking now.
I haven't looked at the weekend yet.
How often do you say that in answer to the question?
Oh, a lot. A lot.
Mark Beaver also asked whether 5-1 is value ante-post for the Albert Bartlett Novices hurdle. Let's have a look at the betting for that. It's not a very full market at this point. Another horse to mention at the moment who's got some form in the book would be Hollow Games, who won that grade 3 at Navan over 2.5 miles for Gordon Elliott and Davy Russell. 5-1 for Blazing Khal in March.
I don't know, Lydia. It's probably tight enough to tell you the truth, especially when you haven't seen half the maybe you have seen, but you probably haven't seen 2 or 3 of the opposition yet.
I think we probably haven't. At the same stage in most seasons, I think we've seen less of the opposition, particularly in the novice hurdles division. I think I'd be very wary of it, personally speaking. Now we're going to devote a whole proper section to juvenile herders for the first time in this series on Road to Cheltenham. We're finally getting our act together, Ruby, and we're going to start by talking about Interne de Civila's success at Cheltenham.
Yeah, well, after last weekend's action, Lydia, I'm pretty glad that we had left the 3-year-olds and we had some content for this weekend, to tell you the truth. But Interne de Civila was good at Cheltenham, and Chester Williams, I think you were working with Jonathan Neeson, and he quite correctly pointed out it was a very, very good ride. And look, he gets to the front quite quickly on Interne de Civila, who jumped the first really well. And if you watch them at the 3rd hurdle, Interne de Civila is in front. York Scene, the green colours, is your favourite. And even though they're not going quick, there's a fair gap from the horse in front to those at the back of mid-division. 4th hurdle, Interne de Civila was very good. At the 6th hurdle, if you watch him, he pings it, but he lands running and he's doing it so easily in front. They're all bunched up behind him down to 2 out where he jumps it well. But as they move away from the second last hurdle, Interne de Civila looks so comfortable compared to the rest of them. And around the bend, if you keep looking at the running rail on the inside, Chester Williams is well off the end of that running rail and almost to the road. before he has to drop his rear end in the saddle and ask intern the Sivola to go. And if you're making the running on the new course in Cheltenham, and you can get that far up the hill before you've had to ask, you're going to get to the line. And this horse, it was messy at the last, wasn't his best jump, but he picks up again, and you'd love the way he hits the line then. It was a really good ride, but I also thought the best horse still won.
Yeah, I agree with both of those points. This is an exciting young horse. It was only his second start over hurdles. Afterwards, Nick Williams was talking about the festival being just a possibility, and he did say festival rather than triumph. Of course, the team have won a Fred Winter before, but this horse is on a fast, steep upward trajectory on the basis of this. And Chester also said an interesting thing in that the horse was green between the hurdles rather than at the hurdles. And usually it would be the other way around.
Yeah, but he's probably improved a hell of a lot for his run at Warwick, behind the Harry Skelton horse, and he's going the right direction. I mean, not every horse is a honeysuckle that just turns up and wins every day, and some horses get beaten, they improve, and this looks like one.
Yes, we'll move to Warwick in a moment. I just want to pick out a couple of horses that were in the backwash at Cheltenham. Twilight Twist, who seemed to stumble after the second last. I thought he did well in the steadily run race to come through, and I wonder whether he might be interesting for handicaps. And Message Personnel, he was making his UK debut, really good looking horse. Made a lot of mistakes though, didn't he?
He did. He did. I watched it live on the day, and I watched it again. And when I watched it again, there was only one horse that interested me, and that was the winner.
Yeah, in terms of quality and long-term future, I'd agree. But, there are lots of different races at different levels that different horses can win.
Yeah, there are different people look at things different ways, and I'm afraid that's just not my forte.
Some people are right, and some people are. Let's move on to Warwick, shall we? And have a look at that In This World Intern de Civila clash. They were both making their hurdling debut, and In This World ended up being an impressive winner. We've mentioned him earlier on in the season, but this is the first sign of his form really being franked.
Yeah, exactly. And Intern de Civila again in the blue and white colours. Chester Williams went to make it at Warwick, jumps the first hurdle, but by the time they get around to the bend, to the third hurdle, Greystone has gone to the front, and Intern de Civila is back in third place. In This World is back there, sort of 7th or 8th in the yellow cap. At the fourth hurdle, In This World does make a bit of a mistake, and at the third last, Intern de Civila makes a mistake. But when they get around to the second last, it's a match between Greystone and In This World. It's not even a match. In This World is going better than Greystone, and it scoots away. That pings the second last, flies down to the last, a little bit high in green, but a lot to like about it. And if you're reading form, literally, In This World is entitled to improve as well.
Yes.
Intern de Civila improved a hell of a lot. So too could In This World. But yeah, I'd say they're two smart, sharp horses.
The counterpoint to that would be, clearly Intern de Civila has come on hugely from his debut. We're kind of assuming that In This World will. They can go the other way too.
Oh, of course they can. But look, we look for the positives first.
Yeah, okay, fair enough. I think there's only positives to take out of him so far. I think Dan Skelton, who trains him, was suggesting that he might be put away until the Adonis might be the next time that we see in this.
I didn't look at the official going description in Warwick, but from watching the replay, it didn't look that slow.
I should also mention that
you'll be avoiding the winter.
Yeah,
like, heading for the Adonis when it be starting to dry up again.
If it ever gets deep over this winter.
That's true too.
Yeah. In This World ran into a certain Phil Dore when they both met each other on the west coast of France on the flat. In This World beat Phil Dore. Phil Dore has since gone to Gordon Elliott's, and he's the other juvenile we've already mentioned in this series. Ruby, let's talk about Phil Dore in a little bit more detail.
Yeah, look, Phil Dore, he obviously won on his debut at Down Royal, but we're going to pick him up at Fairyhouse. He's the grey horse down the inside, behind the pace. He's a sound enough jumper. By the time we get to the third hurdle round the bend in Fairyhouse, Lunar Power of Noel Meads has gone to the front. Phil Dore is behind him, and watch Phil Dore, that hurdle, he's slick and low. That's a real mark of his jumping now. When they get back down the hill to the fifth, Dr. Brown Bear is back in front, and they're going a really good gallop. This race was run at a really good tempo. But when they get back around towards the second last hurdle, both Lunar Power and Phil Dore are quickening away from the rest of the field. Now, it looks like Lunar Power is getting away from Phil Dore at 2 out, but all the way down to the last, Davy Russ's body language it's animated, but he's not flat out. I think he always felt he was going to get there. Now, Phil Dore does get the better jump at the last hurdle, and he wheels by a half a length, but you kind of always thought Davy was confident and he was going to nail Lunar Power. Now, to put context on Phil Dore's form, if you go back to Down Royal and we pick him up at the top of the hill, jumping the third last, and you see him quickening down to 2 out. Well, the horse he's quickening away from is C Sessions. So you see Field quickens down, pings the second last. And if we jump to Aintree 2 weekends ago, C Sessions, Calvados, White Pepper in the mare's novice hurdle there, juvenile hurdle there. C Sessions is the one in the middle. Calvados on the outside or stand side under James Bowen looks like that's going to win. But C Sessions for Ross O'Sullivan and Johnny Burke battles gamely in the middle to win. Now, Field beat her quite comprehensively in Down Royal. So if there's a correlation to form, you can see where Field is.
Yes, I'm liking all these sort of explorations of the form lines and how they intertwine. Gordon Elliott, the trainer of Fildor, has said that either Leopardstown over Christmas or the Grade 1 finale at Chepstow might be the target at that time of year. He was saying that some cutting the ground, soft ground, would be an advantage to him. So a different type potentially to In This World.
Yeah, possibly. That's the feeling you're getting, but it is. It's mad that 2 horses coming out of the one race in the East Coast in France could end up at the top of the betting in one race in Gloucester in March.
Yeah, they are at this stage. Let's stick with the Gordon Elliott yard, shall we? Because he had Britska win a maiden hurdle event at Fairyhouse at the weekend, and he was talking potentially Fred Winter, Boodle's Fred Winter with this horse, but also a dual purpose campaign.
Everyone seems to be mentioning handicaps for these juveniles at the minute, don't they? No one seems to want to have a trying horse. Let's all have handicappers. Britska
Do you think that's telling, actually, Ruby? Do you think that's telling in that they feel that they've got maybe better horses to come, or that they're just aware that maybe the top flight horses aren't yet out even later than usual in the season?
Possibly, but maybe just putting context on it too and trying to talk the handicappers down, not let them get run away with themselves, because once you're behind the handicapper, you struggle for a long time. You need to be ahead of them.
Have you ever known that to work, to talk a handicapper down? Have you ever known that to work?
No, neither have I. No. But at least when you go back to the handicapper to have your debate in 6 months' time, you can say, well, I told you then.
Anyway, Britska, you were saying, go on.
Britska, going to the second hurdle here. He's in the blue and white colours down the inside. He's well settled. But we could show you the whole race, but not much happens till you get back around to the home turn when Scenic Look has quickened and set sail, and Britska does look to be in a bit of trouble off the bend, round into the second last hurdle. But it's a long, don't ask me why, but the inside track in Fairyhouse seems to be stiffer than the main course on the outside. I could never figure out why, but that's the way it rides. So Davy Russell has let Scenic Look off, but by the time there's something second last, Britska is starting to eat into that lead. And by the time they get to that last, Britska's going to win. It's a sloppy jump or untidy jump, but Britska had plenty up its sleeve and it gallops away to win well. Look, Celestial Horizon was the favourite. That obviously blew out and ran disappointingly, but yeah, Britska did win and win well. But like most juveniles, there's a reason we've left them till now to talk about them. I'd most certainly want to see them twice before I'd be able to have any opinion on them.
Yeah, okay. So a horse we have seen twice ran at Doncaster. That was Night Salute up against Porticello, who is previously a Weatherby winner, an impulsive one who'd been pretty busy over hurdles. Night Salute had won at Cheltenham, carrying a penalty here in the Summit at Doncaster. You mentioned keeping something up your sleeve. I think he tends to. I think he's more on top in this than the margin of victory would suggest.
I would agree with you. Obviously, Porticello for the Moors was your favourite. Made a mistake at the first, but then jumped the rest of the hurdles really well until Porticello got back into the home straight, flattened the third last, and that allowed Night Salute to close up behind them. But Paddy Brennan stayed in Night Salute slipstream till he got to the back of the second last before he switched out to have a go going to the last. And I tend to agree with you. I thought this horse won cosily and was just about doing enough. And look, we have him winning at Cheltenham, and you can watch him off the home turn. Paddy Brennan is on the stand side with him. Down to the last hurdle, he jumps it well, but he ends up wandering across the track. Yet every time Paddy straightens him, he seems to quicken a little bit, and he's only just about doing enough.
Yeah, I think so. I think he's got the bare bones of a really good hurdling technique, and he's quite well bred from a good sort of staying flat family as well. And I think he's an interesting one. Milton Bradley, his trainer, was saying beforehand that Doncaster will get them to decide whether for Cheltenham they'll be in the Triumph, the Fred Winter, or the Pub. I think they're going to be in the Triumph, aren't they?
I doubt they'll be in the pub anyway.
Let's have a quick look at the ante-post JCB Triumph Hurdle betting. I should also mention at this stage Harry Fry's recent Sandown winner, Forever Blessed, who could well be heading to Chepstow over Christmas for the finale, as I mentioned earlier. Now it's time for our social media poll, Ruby. And I have to think that the question was just too difficult because we only got 689 responses.
I concur. It was over my head, Lydia. I had no clue what you're looking for.
Well, I mean, literally, what the question asked was, which handicapper can make a splash in graded company? Is it A, Editor de Gite, who ran and won at Cheltenham over the weekend? Is it West Cork, who won the Great Wood in November there? Or is it other, a horse of your choice? 56% of people roughly preferred Editor de Gite. What did you make of his success under Niall Houlihan?
Yeah, I thought he was good. Yeah, I love the way he jumps. He's obviously progressed through the marks. He's won 5 handicaps, I think it is now, or 4. Good jumper, strong traveller. The one that slightly worries me about him is the fact that the Moors have been claiming off him. Did they think that maybe 140 was his level? They claimed off him that day with Niall Houlihan. They claimed off him again at the weekend off 147. But look, he's a strong galloper, powerful jumper. He got headed down the hill. He gets back in front going to 2 out. He's progressing. Now, I know Niall stepped in for Josh, but Jamie could have ridden him. So they claimed off him for a reason. And he's going the right way. He's going to end up in graded company, whether he's a graded horse or not. I'm with that.
Yeah, he's got to improve again. I loved the ride from Niall Houlihan. I thought it was a really excellent ride. How about West Cork then, who was the Great Wood winner and runs at Ascot on Saturday?
Should we find out on Saturday? I thought No Ordinary Joe looked a little unlucky in the Great Wood and the reopposed Saturday. So we'll see.
Okay. He, of course, representing the Skeltons. The other are the interesting answers, I think. Scott Rudderham has picked Pic D'Orhy, who we mentioned earlier on in the show. He said Pic D'Orhy in the Turners, and big plaudits to Scott for getting the remembering the correct name of the race that he's nominating at Cheltenham. Not the JLT, not the Mars, Turners. He said he'd have cantered home at Newbury, arguably would have beaten at Chantry House last season. That was at Ascot when he fell. He's a very capable horse in his day.
But he's fallen both those days.
Yeah, that's the flaw, isn't it? He's got quite a low trajectory of jumping. I was toying with putting this horse in, who is Tommy's Oscar. And I'm just trying, that was from Dan Creighton, who said Tommy's Oscar could be competitive in a poor 2-mile herding division in the UK. Haydock Champion Hurdle Trial could be a realistic target. He's won at the course already. Could win another handicap in between, is only up £3 for the latest win, and looks like a horse that can keep winning. What do you make of Anne Hamilton's Tommy's Oscar? I
think Anne Hamilton has placed Tommy's Oscar exceptionally well. I think Tommy could find it a little bit more difficult from here on.
Okay. We've got an answer from Martin Dixon. Have you heard of him?
Is that Chris's brother?
Chris's brother, that's right. So Chris's brother has tweeted in to say, Papa Tango Charlie, if graded novices count. They do count, Chris's brother. What do you think of Papa Tango Charlie? Have you even heard of him?
No, it's like something Mark Howard to pull out. It's out of left field.
He's won a couple of starts at Carlisle, won a novice limited handicap and another open handicap chase. So I'll keep an eye on Papa Tango Charlie. Thank you very much, Martin. And AW at AW White has a very simple answer to this question. He just says, ask Gordon.
I know the answer. Will you ask him?
Saint
Felician.
Ah, thanks, Gordon.
Cheers.
Now, we're going to end this week's show by focusing on the hurdlers, all of the hurdling action from the past 7 days. And we're going to start, Ruby, with the Grade 2 Unibet International Hurdle, won for the Twiston Davis teams by Guard Your Dreams.
Yeah, and he was a good winner, but the start is very important as well, Lydia. When you look at Song for Someone, he looked like he never wanted to go. Aidan Coleman even couldn't really get him through the tape to go forward, and Heaven Help Us gets a big bump from Wild About Oscar at the first hurdle, and that seemed to set her back. Now, for 2 front runners, they ended up at the back of the field quite early. Guard Your Dreams has battled really well to win. I actually thought Hunter's Call was going to win going to the last. So Royal even looked flat as a pancake. Heaven Help Us needs to go up and trip. So does Song for Someone. Guard Your Dreams. It was great placing from Nigel Twiston Davis, but I don't know where you go now.
Yeah, they were talking about the Rel Keel beforehand. It'll be interesting to see what happens now. You mentioned Heaven Help Us, the mare looking perhaps to need a step back up in trip. We saw a couple of other interesting mares in action. Martello Sky beating Indefatigable. We talked previously about Indefatigable's the way she behaved prior to the start and the poor run through the long distance hurdle. Did you see a different Indefatigable, even though she was beaten here only narrowly at Cheltenham?
I don't think I did. Indefatigable again was reluctant to line up. Now she went, but in a lower graded race where it didn't go quick, being a handicap compared to the graded race at Newbury, she was able to get back into the race and get on her feet and travel. I think if she behaves the same way at the festival, she's never going to see where they went in the mare's hurdle. Now, Quiviga often was reluctant to go out onto the track, but she never gave away the ground. She lined up and went with them. She'll have to go with them. And Martello Sky is very tough. Game mare Aidan Coleman committed her off the bend, and she outstayed the opposition. But I think both are placed horses in a race that looks wide open because there's no superstar in it.
No, I agree with you. They're kind of in the mix for maybe placing. If we have a look at the ante-post betting for the mare's hurdle, it's a real mess, really, in terms of what horse we're going to see there. She wears it well, maybe. Tell me something, girl. Black Tears is even still in the betting, and you suggested to me earlier that this horse has been retired.
Yeah, I've heard Jack Kennedy say it 2 or 3 times. He knew going out to ride her last year that was her last run. Now, I think that was common knowledge at the time, Lydia, but obviously somebody doesn't know. And
I didn't know. The bookmakers don't know.
That's because you just don't listen.
Sorry, what?
She wears it well. Galwa, Stormy Island. What else you call out there? Tell me something, girl. Look, obviously, Black Tears retired. Concertis has gone jump, and Honeysuckle will be in the champion hurdle. So look, it's a wide open contest, and both those mares are entitled to take their chance.
Yeah, watch this space over the coming weeks, I'd have thought. Right, I'm going to switch to Sporting John. We thought this horse could play a part in the Stayers hurdle, not on the basis of his second start over hurdles this season, though.
Look what we got for thinking. Victoria Malzard was very good on Kansas City Chief. Hard thing to do, make the run in over 3 miles in the new course in Cheltenham and win. Booked out in front, didn't go that quick. Sporting John, mid-division down to the first hurdle. He's grand and settled and relaxed, so can't say he over-raced or anything went wrong for him. Down the hill to 2 out. What do you want to be on? They're all still in a bunch. Kilbrick and Storms coming down the outside. Victoria Malzard, though, hasn't committed in front. But if you keep watching Tom O'Brien's leg on Sporting John, I know he's nudging, but he doesn't drop his rear end into the saddle to ask this horse to quicken until he gets all the way up to almost the road. Yet when he asks Sporting John to go, he goes nowhere. A very disappointing run from him.
It really is disappointing where they're going to go from here. They were originally thinking about the Howden Long Walk Hurdle Grade 1 at Ascot this weekend. We can have a look at the horses declared for that and the betting. The interesting one, of course, is the horse like Sporting John, owned by JP McManus, Champ. This horse was set for a chasing campaign this season. We haven't seen him since pulling up in the Gold Cup last March. But now they've switched to hurdles. I'm intrigued, Ruby, because when Nicky Henderson, his trainer, was talking about the chasing campaign, he was saying how the horse needs to go left-handed, yet over the hurdles they're starting out right-handed. What do you make of that, first off?
Wouldn't bother me in a hurdle race, Lydia. Obviously there's less jumps and they're lower, and horses don't tend to go as left or right. Normally, Goshen being a classic example of me being wrong here, but I don't think that'll be an issue for Champ. Even looking back at his form, I didn't notice him going any direction over hurdles, and I think he'll be fine. What I thought was more noticeable was Nicky has often mentioned Nico being de Boinville being key to Champ's schooling, yet Nico de Boinville has elected for Buzz. And if you're looking for a winner this weekend, you know what Nico thinks.
Yeah, it's interesting. Buzz stepping up to 3 miles to see whether that is going to be the making of him. Champ, of course, has already won over the trip, won the Sefton at Aintree after finishing second to City Island in the Ballymore in his novice hurdling season. Time Hill's there. Paisley Park back from a back to front run in first time cheek pieces at Newbury. Yeah,
Time Hill has to overcome a poor run in France, but I think he can bounce back and he'll be right in the mix. Paisley Park, I'm afraid, looks to be going in the wrong direction for my money.
Well, this is the race that we'll be probably primarily focusing on in terms of our review in this show this time next week. We'll also be looking ahead to all the key Christmas action, so make sure that you join us then. In the meantime, you can check out the column that accompanies this series. That's www.racingtv.com/Road to Cheltenham. And we will be back this time next week, won't we, Ruby? With a tip, maybe? Lydia. With a tip opportunities to tip.
How to cook your turkey.
Useful.
Don't feel like a punter, feel like a favourite with our best odds guaranteed on all UK and Irish races.